Hey, good day, and welcome to the Dog on It Trucking Podcast. Who do we have on this week's show? Gerard Kuntz of Spring Creek Carriers and Matt Richardson from KRTS. What are we talking about? Virtual truck driver training, the pros, the cons, and the challenges of virtual truck driver training during a COVID. All right, let's get on it. Welcome to the Dog on It Trucking Podcast. When it comes to trucking safety, the dog is on it. What do we do on this show? I get to talk to some of the most influential trucking executives in our industry so that we can pick up new tips and tricks to use in our everyday businesses. So with that, let's get on with the show. Welcome to another episode and show. Today we are welcoming Gerard Kuntz of Spring Creek Carriers and Matt Richardson of KRTS, and we're talking about virtual training. Welcome, Gerard. How are you?
Good, Chris. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. And
Good.
Matt,
And
come
Matt?
on in and
Hello.
say hello.
Morning, guys. Chris, thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. Gerard, I just wanted to start off with a question. COVID. We're still in the midst of COVID. How has it affected Spring Creek?
Well, I mean, initially it was pretty horrible. You know, a lot of things a lot of things slowed down. A lot of things died fairly quickly. Business-wise, we were able to keep it all going just fine. But it was huge changes, and it was an awful lot of stuff to start coming up with the policies, coming up with procedures and practices to do during COVID to just let people in the building, as well as moving people who could work from home. Obviously, that doesn't affect the truck driver at all because not something you can do from home. But we had to do a lot there to help protect the guys and to protect everybody. You know, figuring out how to keep the trucks clean, figuring out how to keep them protected when they're running across the road and going into shippers and consignees. And yeah, there was an awful lot of stuff we had to do very quickly to figure out how can we do this and keep everybody safe.
Right? I mean, keeping everybody safe is the bottom line. One of my carriers told me that being a cross-border truck driver right now, in their opinion, is one of the safest professions, because they were saying that shippers and receivers aren't letting you into the premises anymore, including, unfortunately, washrooms. But
yes,
you know, have you found that to be true?
We're kind of thinking that. Yeah, I mean, going at the truck stops, most of the big truck stops are being super careful about what they do. They're making sure that it's up to the individual to make sure they keep their distance and to make sure that they are clean and that they're wearing masks, and there's an awful lot up to the individual. But as far as dealing with, we're cross border almost exclusively. Dealing with the stuff in the southern states, some states take it seriously, some don't. But either way, they're still having really limited contact with people once they leave home. And in that regard, yeah, it is not like they're not at the highest risk, not like a pediatric nurse or someone like that, where they're actually, you have to touch people, you have to, do the medical stuff. We're not like that at all.
Yeah, that's cool. I hadn't thought of it. I always thought that it was a high exposure job until my client said for most of his drivers, it wasn't. But Matt, how has COVID affected KRTS?
Yeah, we're like everybody else, Chris. There's definitely been an effect on us and needing to come up with new and creative ways to adjust and adapt. Finding ways to be able to deliver training in a safe manner where the education can still get across to the participants. So yeah, the first lockdown had a fairly large effect on us. Most companies that were into delivering training weren't looking at having outside or third party contractors in to deliver anything. That opened back up, around the end of May, which was good. And we're constantly trying to come up with new ways to be able to deliver training safely. A number of the companies we work with are are good with us coming on site with all the protocols and procedures that we have in place, along with committing to following their safety protocols and procedures. We deal with companies that just aren't at that point yet, which is completely understandable, but we still have to find ways to deliver the quality education, and that's where we're adjusting and adding more virtual programs to what we can do. Between the virtual driver safety meetings, we're offering the LLC driver certification as well as instructor certification virtually now. So it's just about, adapting, adjusting, and making sure that quality education can be delivered in a way that the carrier and the customer wants it, but also in a way that it is the safest to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think it's huge. And I know KRTS has made many adjustments. And so has programs like NATME, just as we're talking about virtual, the last couple of NATME courses have been offered virtually. Gerard, how has the training changed at Spring Creek?
Absolutely. And I mean, to talk to Matt, yeah, we've had a couple of KRTS trainers in here for a couple of different items where we had to do stuff face to face, and but we had to do it differently. For those trainings, we had a couple people were trained as forklift trainers through one of their programs, and everything was kept in the warehouse where we could keep distance. The other trainings have been done up in the boardroom, and we have a fairly large boardroom where you can sit 10 to 12 feet apart, and we've stuck with that. Having said that, most of our trainings we're doing virtually, using online platforms. We've brought on a number of drivers, and we've typically in the past done in-cab training, even with the most experienced drivers, bringing them in for a day or two with just to learn our Spring Creek procedures. How do we do things? We cut that out completely. We've unfortunately not been able to bring on any newly licensed drivers, and I know KRTS and the other schools are all working to qualify as many drivers as possible. And we've had to stop that. I think we're getting to a point where we can start doing that. But having said that, we've brought on experienced drivers, and we've spent a lot of time training them over the phone. Set them up, do what we have to face in the boardroom with the distancing, but then sending them out on their own, and then having specifically myself dispatch them for the first few days. Talking to them at every stop, having them, going through everything, explaining everything, having them call at any hour of the day or night if they have questions, because we can't do the stuff face to face or in the cab that we would normally do. And it's been tough. It's been tough, but it actually has worked really well. Everybody seems to understand. Everybody's taken it seriously, and the people that we brought on, they've been bright enough, and they've been intelligent enough to be able to get it, but at the same time, that's limited us. We can't bring in the less experienced drivers, and like I just said, we're hoping to get back into that very soon. I think we're getting a grasp on what we need to do. Yeah,
let's hope after this Ontario lockdown is complete at the end of January that you can get back to that.
Yeah.
Because
if it ends at the end of January, even.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't know, but newly licensed drivers are absolutely needed, and it's critical that you bring them on in a structured format, because they're not quite ready yet. No matter how good the training school is, they still need that finishing program.
Right, and in many cases, a brand newly licensed driver, our program was minimum 6 to 8 weeks with another instructor, and it's worked, and it's worked really well. I was figuring about probably almost 25% of our drivers at the moment are people who came through a program like that, and it's working really well. But of course, now we've got a couple of trucks parked in the yard that we can't put someone in because there's only so many experienced drivers out there. I'm sure that everybody knows that's part of the new reality. But bringing on the new people is what we all want to do. It's one of the reasons why we have such a good relationship with KRTS and with the TTSAO.
Right. Specifically, virtual training. How have you been using that?
We've always used a program for quarterly trainings for drivers, so you can assign it, and they have certain, every quarter there's something relevant that we send out to them. a number of hours of training, and that's tied in with our safe driving reward bonus. But the virtual trainings is just using the same program. We've just expanded it, and they are do this training on their own time, paid training, of course, but they can't do it in the building. They can't do training room set up anymore. This is all done at home, and and everybody's been good with that. They've appreciated that.
Yeah. And Matt, I know that KRTS has their own online training portal. Have you seen an uptick in different people using the online training?
Yeah, there has been a bit of an uptick. We're getting more carriers reaching out to us to learn about what that is. It's being included into more training packages now. Again, to kind of echo what Gerard said, it's another way to get that information and education out to the driver in a timely manner. And like he said, they can do it on their own time, basically anywhere they have an high-speed internet connection.
Yeah. And how did you, just changing subjects a little bit, I know you participated in the KRTS Safety Dog Thanksgiving Day virtual driver meeting, Gerard. How did Spring Creek find that?
I've gotten huge numbers of positive comments on it. Actually, virtually no complaints. It was, people did it, and being able to do it either on the Friday or Saturday session was awesome. But being the guys who weren't available, and there were a number of them, there were people. American Thanksgiving is a good time to take vacation, so they were able to do it after the fact. That all worked out really well. They did miss out on the live chat at the end of both the Friday and Saturday sessions, and I totally appreciated the questions that came up there because some of our folks asked some good questions, but some of the other people who were involved asked totally good questions, and you get the benefits from that. And as yourself, as well as Carrie, who did other stuff, Chris, that a lot more information comes out that is specifically on people's minds at that time, and that you folks have raised with what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But Matt, what was the feedback like from that virtual session?
We've got great feedback, Chris, from all the carriers who participated, who have had a chance to talk to their drivers. We had some great comments from drivers in the chat box during those virtual safety meetings. The feedback's been really positive. It's what led us to, and we're probably going to touch on this at some point again, but we're going to be offering more of those virtual driver safety meetings going forward. Just because there's really not an endpoint right now to what lockdowns or what regulations are going to be in place when carriers are going to be able to have 20, 40, 100 drivers in one spot again for a driver. With these the virtual concept, it allows carriers to get the information out to their drivers in a safe way. Over that 2-day span, we had almost 500 drivers that we were able to educate safely, and it helps the carriers meet their requirements to their insurance providers.
Yeah, and also afterwards, as was stated, the drivers had the ability, those who couldn't make it that Friday, Saturday, had the ability to view it for a time period afterwards. And we had another, I think it was 289 views after the fact. So, you said it was around 500 who participated on the Friday, Saturday, and that's true, plus another 200. We're somewhere between 700 or 800 participants, which I thought was just outstanding. But kind of leads into the next question. What permanent changes do you think, looking into the crystal ball for Spring Creek carriers, are there permanent changes that COVID has caused? And I'm thinking, because we're talking training, I'm thinking about recruiting and the training process. Are there permanent changes that you think will be coming down the pipe?
Virtual learning is always going to be there. I'm a huge fan of it, and this is shown that it can be done. I quite frankly would like to get back to the face-to-face. Doing the annual safety meeting virtually worked really well, but everybody missed out on being able to see each other. I mean, we have drivers who've never met each other because they're on totally opposite schedules, and they do the same schedule every week. And when you work with people for a year or two, and all of a sudden you see some stranger walking across the yard, you kind of want to know who she is. But as far as permanent, yeah, I mean, virtual is is definitely the way of the future, but not at the expense of face to face.
Yeah, Matt, do you see changes for KRTS on a permanent way of delivering the programs?
I think there will be some. I would definitely agree with Gerard that you can't really put a price on the importance of those face-to-face interactions. I think one of the things that this has definitely done is opened up the eyes to carriers or companies that were against any type of virtual or online training. And we came into those regularly that were totally against it, had to be in person. They've seen zero value in anything done virtually or through online training. That they've been forced to, not forced, but they've had to adjust if they wanted to keep up with their education or the providing of the education. And now they've been able to see the value that quality education can still get delivered in other forms than just in person. So I think it opens some eyes for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's probably fair to say that we're all learning how we can mesh it together better. That the face-to-face combined with the virtual, some things, particularly in technical knowledge and so on, or particularly with a speaker who can't be there face-to-face, is phenomenal. And if you tie that in tightly with the face-to-face, the two can work together really well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a big fan of person-to-person meetings as well. I always think that they are the best way to go. And then virtual is the second best, quite honestly. My opinion is that you're going to see a combination now for not very much investment in equipment. And I'm just thinking of this now as listening to the answers to those questions. I think the next virtual meeting, the next in-person driver meeting for a client, I'm going to have to invest in a motion camera that'll follow me as I do the presentation. And then within 24 or 48 hours, I could have that recording posted so those who couldn't make it could watch the exact same driver meeting as it actually happened.
For sure. We got just to kind of piggyback on that point about cameras, Chris, something interesting that we're doing now, and it's going to roll out for the first time this week. Obviously, we can't travel out east right now with COVID, but we have a couple customers out there who are wanting to participate in the LC program. So we'll be doing the workshop via Zoom, and then there's a 360 GoPro camera that the drivers will be filming their commentary drives with, uploading them to the cloud, and our LLC master instructor will be reviewing the drives with the driver.
That's cool.
Interesting.
So I haven't heard say a 360 GoPro.
Yeah, it's a 360 camera, so you can literally see everything that the driver is viewing while they're driving. There's ways to cut and edit it, but then there's also, when we view it on our end after the driver uploads it, it's as simple as navigating the mouse around to be able to see everything that they're discussing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're excited.
Sorry?
We're excited for it.
Yeah, and again, going back to my thought of once we get back to in-person meetings, that would be a great thing, because that would we'd have the audience in the. Anyways, just way off topic, but.
No, absolutely. I like the thought.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Virtual training is going to be here for the next several months. I'm thinking pretty much 2021. I really don't think that companies, even once the vaccine and everything rolls out, I think everybody is going to be hesitant to get into large groups again for the rest of 2021, because it's going to take, as Trudeau said, he thinks the vaccine will have been made available to all Canadians who want it by the end of 2021. So it's going to take us that long to get vaccinated. That's why I'm saying I think virtual training will be here for all of this year before carriers get more used to having everybody back in large groups again. How do you see Spring Creek using virtual training going forward for the next period of time? I don't want to say a year, but the next.
No, I know. I agree. We don't know either. We're going to use it as long as if we have to exclusively, we'll use it as long as we need to. We want to get to the face-to-face meetings. We're just going to do like we've done all along, just week by week. Where are we at now? What are we doing? And is it appropriate? And is it safe? And is it a good risk for us to bring people in, or do we just stick with the virtual? Again, like I said, the virtual training is going to be there tied in with face-to-face anyways. It is, and we've embraced it several years ago. But some of it's going to stay.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the disadvantages? Because you've said that in-person training is the best. What are some of the disadvantages about online training?
It's the lack of being able to see a person's reaction. I mean, we're looking at each other on the screen right now, and it's still limited on what we can see, right? It's still limited on the response. It's still, when somebody, slouches in their chair in the middle of training, or they're looking off in the distance, you know if you're losing them, or if you need to adjust what you're saying, or take a break. That may be a disadvantage. The other one, again, that I mentioned earlier, not being able to get everybody in the same room together. I'm sure our annual meetings are similar to what many companies do. We start with breakfast, so that puts people in a good mood. We get a chance to talk. Those who like to go out for a breath of fresh air after a cup of coffee, get the chance to do that. But you're seeing people and you're talking with people, and you always connect with someone that you haven't for a long time. This is not something you're going to get virtually, unfortunately.
For sure.
Other than that, but for the actual information, the technical information, and for having a safety topic, virtual is phenomenal. I mean, Chris, we wouldn't have had a chance to listen to you talk the same way as we did on November 20, whatever it was.
But you could have hired me to come out. I'm available.
And it may happen.
Matt, what do you see as changes going forward for virtual? Sorry, what are the disadvantages of virtual training? And then I'll ask you about some of the advantages.
Yeah, I would echo what Gerard said. Sometimes it's tough to get a read on whether the individuals are really taking in the content or not. When you're in person, it's much easier to read a room than virtually. And that we're in an industry that we're used to face-to-face interaction and shaking hands and being able to put faces to names and meeting people and really connecting. It's tough to truly connect virtually. It's just important to try to make the best out of that connection and ensure the education and information gets across. And it's also, I think, one of the other important things is the time frame when you are delivering virtual training. I wouldn't recommend an 8-hour long education session virtually. I think you got to keep them short, 1 to 2-ish hours to truly keep people engaged.
Yeah. Any suggestions that Spring Creek might have as to, because you participated in that Thanksgiving meeting, and you've already heard us kind of allude to the fact that KRTS and Safety Dog are going to do it again. Suggestions for improvement of the format for that meeting?
No, I really don't. You met my expectations quite nicely. Obviously, a different topic every time, but there's so many regular topics that we all deal with all the time. That are totally relevant, and any one of 7 or 8 different items that we deal with in this business, whether it's winter driving or distracted driving or trip planning. I mean, anything in there.
Yeah, I'm working on the next presentation, by the way, Matt, about halfway through defensive driving, as that was Matt's suggestion for a topic. So I'm working hard on that one as for our next one. So when is the next virtual truck driver training meeting, Matt? Have we nailed down a date?
Yeah, so it's going to take place in March. I think the live date will be March the 6th. But again, it will be similar to what we did over the Thanksgiving long weekend, where drivers will be able to attend on that day live. The presenters will be live and have the opportunity to answer questions from the drivers. Then it will be available on recording for any drivers or carriers who can't have their drivers available on the day of this.
Yeah, and are we going to have it available for how many days after the live event?
So this past one we had available for just over a month. We haven't hammered down the exact details for the March one as far as the recording length goes, but I would suggest that it would be similar.
Yeah, I would think if it's March the 6th, then somewhere around the 31st. Sorry, yes, there are 31 days in March. Had to check. But somewhere around the 30-day mark, I would suggest it be pulled down. Would Spring Creek, is that enough time, 30 days after the live event, do you think, Gerard?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Okay. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Typically, you're gonna try and get as many people on the live event, and I would encourage people to do the live event simply because of the advantages of the live chat and being able to ask questions right there. Yeah, no. But 30 days, easy time.
And going back to what you had said about monitoring the room, I remember on Zoom, many people had their cameras on, which I thought was a great thing. And it helped me as a presenter, even though it was recorded, I was watching the live feed of those people to see which parts of the presentation seemed to strike more of an interest. And then which parts, because I wasn't presenting it live, I was there live to answer the questions. I could watch these people and I could see which parts they thought were a little more boring, so that I could tweak the presentation for the next time. Because it was winter driving. I mean, every winter we're going to be talking about winter driving again.
Yeah. It was interesting, Chris, during the first one as well, to see some of the dialogue in the chat box between drivers and their different views on things and what they've experienced.
Yeah, it was, because it was our first one, it was a lot of fun, and truthfully I enjoyed the chat going back and forth. That I think probably the younger drivers, a lot of the younger ones were more used to having chat as video goes. Some of the drivers of my age, I'm sure, we're not quite as adept at the newer technologies. But just as a last question, because we're running near the end, how did Spring Creek find technology and older drivers? Were there some things that had to be overcome there?
Yeah, I had a couple of guys who tried to get in on the Friday session and just couldn't do it. So we had to do a little workaround and figure it out. Some of them, whether they were doing it on their smartphone and it wasn't quite set up for it. But for the most part, it was pretty straightforward. I think one of them had to do the recorded version because he couldn't get it to work any other way, and that was strictly a computer issue. Other than that, tablets, smartphones, home computers, because most of them were at home, actually worked out just fine. Pretty much everybody was right up to it. I think we have one driver left who used the flip phone, and he knows how to work around it. He's chosen that, and he prefers the security of it, and it doesn't go into it blindly. And other than that, everybody's pretty tech savvy as far, or has learned how to make themselves tech savvy.
That's awesome, Matt. Wrapping this up, final comments.
And we look forward to continue to offer these virtual education sessions and driver meetings. The first one was a big success. We're hoping to only build on that. The continued support of the sponsors that we had will keep this at a very reasonable rate, so we can have as much participation as possible, and just want people to know that it will be our goal to ensure that the education and information delivered is of the highest quality.
Yeah. Any last comments from Spring Creek?
Quite appreciate what you've done, Chris and Matt. It's been, like I said, the session in November was awesome. We're going to look at each individual session as it comes up and see if it fits with our time frame, obviously. But very much appreciate what you guys are doing, and also, I come from a driving background, and I will say, reminding yourself and refreshing yourself on your skills is something that the good driver does all the time. And everybody has things where you kind of think, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Totally appreciate having it brought back in that format.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And Matt, one last question for you. Virtual training, can you purchase this stuff as a one-off if you can't make the training on these specific dates?
Yeah, so what we're getting into now, Chris, again, kind of adapting to the COVID times, is the live virtual safety meetings that we're discussing, but then we're also going to have 8 or 10 what we're kind of calling canned virtual safety meetings, where carriers will be able to pick from a list of topics that they want their drivers to participate in.
Perfect. And with that, I would like to say thanks to both of you for participating. It was awesome.
Thank you, guys.
I hope you loved the show as much as I did. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.